Hi, and welcome to another episode of what was formerly known as the Mystic Discoveries podcast, and I'm transitioning it into the Holistic Human podcast. This is the first podcast I've recorded that has used video, and so you can either listen to this on the podcast apps or you can be watching this on YouTube. So today I am talking to Lou Harvey-Zahra, who some of you may know as a Waldorfy author. It was a real honor to talk to her today. She's the writer of many parenting children's books. Parenting children, of course. Who else do you parent? Including Happy Child, Happy Home, and the wonderful book Through the Rainbow. You like that one, eh, Phoenix? Yeah. And the Angel's Book. Lou has been involved in Waldorf education, special needs education for over 30 years. She's 30 years.
Whoa. That's pretty long.
It is. She's an expert in positive classroom discipline and positive parenting discipline. And she's been an expert when it comes to helping children with Asperger's and autism. She was the co-founder of one of the Steiner schools in Melbourne, Australia, and has run countless workshops for parents, teachers, and other groups of the community about connecting with children.
That's pretty interesting.
It is, eh, Phoenix?
Yeah.
If you can't see, Phoenix is helping me record this intro. So thanks, buddy. She's also the co-creator of a subscription service.
Whoa! That was years.
Yeah, for Nurture the Child, which is a monthly subscription service packed with Waldorfy craft projects, stories, and cooking ideas for children aged 0 to 9. So in the first part of the podcast, we are talking about Lou and her journey, her spiritual beliefs, what led her to become an author, and how she kind of brings spirit into her work. We bond over our first memories being autumnal. I ask her about her spiritual practice, and she goes into what her belief system is. And then at about 50 minutes through, Lou and I start discussing the actual content of her books and the spiritual nature of the child. So if you keep listening right through to the end, we start talking about practical tips of how to be a great connected parents to babies, and then to toddlers, and then to young children. And she kind of gives us an insight into how they're different and why children are not tiny little adults, and why we need to treat them with wonder, respect, and reverence.
And making some funny faces.
Yeah. So to connect with Lou, you can find her on Instagram on Nurture the Child, and at Happy Child Happy Home, and she has a website called happychildhappyhome.com.
Picking my nose is a funny face.
It is a funny face. We might need to get you a tissue. So head on over.
That's going to be a funny face in the video.
Look, active parenting happening here right now at the beginning of our intro. So I'll pop all of the links and stuff in the show notes. I hope you enjoy. My new name on Instagram has yet to change, actually, but this is now the Holistic Human podcast. I feel like that name change is actually more descriptive to what it is that I'm talking about and where I'm going with this in the future. The holistic human idea has just come from the whole point of being a human, really, is about combining spirit and matter. That's our task. Bring spirit into matter and bring the spiritualized matter, gift it to the universe and stuff. So how can we do that holistically? And it also kind of ties into education stuff as well. So I'll do a proper podcast on that actually soon. But for now, Phoenix and I are going to go have more afternoon tea, and I hope you enjoy watching Lou and I talk or listening to us chat. Thanks for watching.
Can I watch the video?
We'll do one video watch. Should I say Kaki Te Anō?
Kaki Te Anō. I mean, goodbye.
Welcome to the Mystic Discoveries podcast, Lou. I'm so grateful to have you here. I've read 3 of your books, 2 of them being child books, these ones, zing, which are amazing. This Angels book, I must say, has been so nice because Phoenix is at that age where he's asking, what's an angel? What do angels do? And honestly, this arrived at the perfect time, and now he's got this really great imagining of what his angels are, and we have discussions about it, which is awesome. So I recommend these books and this book, which is really good, Happy Child, Happy Home. And you've written 4 other books as well?
7 books, yes.
So you've written 7 books altogether.
I have.
And you're the creator of Nurture the Child, which is a subscription service for parents and teachers. You're the co-creator of that, which is amazing. Yes. And that's for parents who have children under the age of 7.
Yeah, toddler to 7, sometimes stretching to 9, that early childhood period. So
yeah,
it's just what we would like to nurture childhood, really. So bringing in rhythms and play and craft, creative discipline, healthy recipes, me telling you a story. And it's beautiful. And we get a lot of people because parents just want practical tips and they want photos and they don't fall from the sky. And so every month you feel like you've been given this whole bundle of I can create one for my child, and I can connect, and I can bring them some magic of craft and storytelling. So that's an honor for me to do that.
Yeah, so you've been creating a lot of stuff, and on top of that you're saying you're very busy, you host workshops with parents and teachers, and you do Steiner teacher training, and is that centered around the Waldorf approach to child development and education mostly? Is that what you center it?
I do Steiner teacher training in LA and here, and I've just come off 3 late Saturday night trainings with all the teachers in the UK because their morning past 7. Yeah, right. And so I do teacher training, yes, and I have about 8 workshops and courses that have been accredited with the government, which means I can go into any school. So I'm really passionate about this not being in a box, and that, when I do positive classroom discipline, that helps every teacher. Or if I do children with sensory needs, that helps everybody. Or so I have a lot of teacher workshops and courses, which I very much enjoy, because anything that I do is always helping a child somewhere, whether it's in a classroom or whether it's in parenting. Yeah. And I have been teaching for 28 years, and I was a specialist in autism and Asperger's. So I've had many kind of hats and many little lives in education, and 18 years with Rudolph Steiner education, and then I've got 2 children who are 19 and 21. So I kind of feel like I've been through the parenting journey, and I've also gathered many, many ideas for classrooms.
It's awesome.
Tools and tips for everybody.
Wow. I guess people might think, like, why would I ask a parenting or education person on the podcast? I mean, most people who have listened to this podcast will have heard that I do talk a lot about Steiner Waldorf education, because that's my passion as a Steiner teacher myself. But there's a whole lot of stuff behind it that I think can relate to parents or people who are around little people and raising children with kind of wanting to know how to bring a kind of spirituality or an awareness of there being more than just the material into their parenting. And we were talking before the podcast started about wanting to make this kind of accessible to everybody, not just kind of putting it, like you said, you'd have to be in a Steiner box. But I'm just really interested to talk to you, Lou, because I think you do that really well. And I have lots of questions to ask you. So do you want to say anything before we begin? Or?
No, it's wonderful to have a conversation and not have masks on and have it's a Sunday afternoon and be girls together and to help people. So that's wonderful for me. So cool. Ask away.
Question number 1. We're starting with you. And what was your childhood like, Lou? Where did you grow up? All that kind of jazz?
I'm actually English, and I grew up in a village called Stubbington, which actually meant burning the stubs of whatever was growing in the fields. And so I feel quite honoured to have had a village type of life, because it was, I mean, we went to our local town, which was 3 miles away, you know, maybe once a month, and we went to the city maybe once or twice a year. And there was something about that. But what I really remember from my childhood, and I often ask this as parents, I say, please tell me your first childhood memory that was positive, because we hold on to memories because we had a feeling. This is what I've learned in life. That if we have a feeling of wonder or joy or shame or fear, then we will hold that as a feeling, yes? Otherwise, we just dream through in that stage. And so when I look back on my childhood and my memories, it was my village festivals, my really, you know, it was really that carnival festival floats every year that I remember. I have this first memory in my kindergarten of my birthday, and then bringing out this cardboard cake, and I tapped it with a magic wand, and underneath was this card. But to me, it was a magic cake. I had no idea how this card got in the cake, but obviously as an adult, it was just a false bottom with a cardboard cake. But for a child, it was the absolute epitome of just incredible magic, you know. And so when I look back, it's really interesting, because yes, I'm a Steiner teacher, but in this village school we sang in the morning, and I remember singing in the morning, and we did Wednesday afternoon basket weaving, and I remember our Wednesday afternoon crafts, and we had festivals, and I walked to school in the seasons. I have vivid memories of just crunching leaves and driving rain and, you know, sunshine. And so when I look back on my childhood, it was simple little magical festivals. It was autumn and nature and walking out in it, and a little bit of a slower pace and a community belonging feel, you know, in that space. And I don't believe that children need anything in some ways more today. They still need all of those elements of wonder. So I just really like asking people about their first childhood memory. Do you have a first childhood memory?
One of my first childhood memories is I always feel like it's autumn time when I remember back on being a child. It always feels autumny and late afternoon. But I have a vivid. What's that?
Are the leaves in the memory? Because
I was just
very strong memory of the crunching leaves and the walk through the park to the school.
Yeah, well, I think like one of my earliest memories is we had a dog, and there was like an old grapevine at the back of our house, and I just remember just being in the back with the dog and the grapevine, and there was the dog used to dig. We used to back onto my dad's school. He worked in a school, and the dog would dig a hole under the fence and would run into the school. And I kind of remember shuffling through the fence myself, and it was after school, so I think Dad was walking back across the field anyway. But it's this kind of vivid memory of like grapevines that are in that autumn phase, and the puppy in me. And then another memory is really like big pile of leaves and jumping in them, and that's my other earliest one. Funny that, eh?
How we both have autumn, and that's why I write about seasonal tables, write about seasonal craft, write about seasonal outings in my books, in my courses, nurture the child, because we have to realize what a child's world is, and it really is those little moments of wonder. It really is. And people think it's toys and Christmas presents and money, but it's the little things that make the big things. And at the back of Happy Child, Happy Home, I asked all these adults their first memories, and they were, my mum put a rope on a tree it had a limb, and I just used to ride it as a horse. That was a piece of rope on a tree. And another surfy dude from Byron Bay, Dad, he was beautiful, 6'4", he said, on Sunday mornings, my dad used to get my head and put it on his heart so I could hear his heartbeat. Oh. And I thought it was amazing that I could hear the boop, 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 which was wonderful. They were in bed together. Did it cost anything? No. Was it free? Yes. And then he was saying, oh, and sometimes I would pull up that hair and all the skin would stretch up. And the way he was saying it. But every single one of these memories that parents often give me are actually free, and they are actually in these elements of imaginative play or nature. Yes, an animal, or being given a chore to do, and the feeling of that, baking a cake. And, you know, that stirs my passion. It stirs my passion that children really haven't changed. They are still children with their magical gifts, their view of the world. And that's why I talk a lot of practical tips to enhance children's lives with these areas that we forget about when we're rushed and we're a bit into technology, which is a wonderful tool, but it can be very distracting sometimes to simple things in life.
Yeah. And it's interesting that those, like, you talk about those simple things, and I've never really thought about it, those memories, those two, which are very autumnal and very elemental as well, the real sense of being with the elements and being, and it just has kind of informed like a whole lot about the tone of me. Like, I feel like it, like I really love autumn and those, you know, those colors, and just the aesthetic of it all has kind of guided my who I've become. It's just, that's interesting. Never really thought about that before.
Well, good. And I'm 53 now, obviously, and these memories would have been 48 years ago, whatever. But I try every autumn in Melbourne to visit the botanical gardens, and I go to the oak lawn, and I just give thanks. And I just crunch through the leaves, and I'm kind of enjoy, and I'm very embarrassing to my children because if I see an autonomous tree, I'm actually in awe. I'm actually in a kind of timeless moment of like, you know, that in-breath we take, that connection we have. Because the seasons of the year are so powerful for the universal rhythm of breathing in and out. They are, we're on a spiritual podcast, but there's a spirituality to the whole four seasons, you know, of the what is winter, but then the rebirth and the new leaf, yes, and then the letting go and the whole cycle. Every single one of those is such a powerful image for us here on earth. It's just so wonderful. So but I'm glad we connected both with autumn leaves. But I do ask everyone who's listening out there to actually see if you can find that first memory, because when we all share and collect them all together, we know what stirred us in childhood, and we know what we're giving our children.
Indeed. And I like that you asked your first positive memory as well, because most of us remember our first negative memory.
That's right. And that's why I talk creative discipline, and that's why, you know, I've been doing creative discipline for 15 years. I have 3 books on it. We'll talk about that later. Yeah. And that's what I run a lot of teacher training, and I do have my first memory like that. And it's like almost forgiving those adults because you realized where they're at. But, you know, and I have my first memory of moving house and coming down the stairs and being squashed in the corner while big men were bringing something really heavy down, and they swore at me. And, you know, I mean, sometimes you find that even as you get older, you feel like you're in the way a bit, you know what I mean? Like you don't realize what happens from that. But I just moved house into this beautiful house here at the beach, and of course I got to know the removal men, and it's really hard work, and they are really holding really heavy things. And we went upstairs with something I thought was going to fit on the veranda, and it didn't. And it was probably one of the heaviest things. And they're like, Lou, you get one of those. You get one of those. And I suppose that you get to appreciate the human behind that. Well, a little before, but again, you can really be jolted with that. And that's why I write on creative discipline. So we don't, children don't get a lot of shocks and they're misinterpreted in their behaviour, misinterpreted. We always look at the reason behind it. And we always look at solutions. So anyway, that will come further on. If you keep listening, we'll talk creative discipline.
It will. So I think we've got a nice picture of what your childhood was like. And your schooling and was pretty traditional. And I mean, you were talking about your first memory in terms of profound foundation. Well, I mean, did you have any profound foundational experiences aside from that early one that kind of made you, was kind of like a signpost to who you would be?
Yes, it was in some ways. It was a really village school, and I think that we didn't have all the testing we have nowadays. Not that I remember, we had traditional handwriting practice, which actually is really lovely. And we started with singing, and so I remember being really dreamy. I mean, I was so dreamy, and I've had dreamy children too. I didn't really wake up, I really didn't wake up until quite later in my life. And even though I've been very successful, I've written a lot of books, I was really very dreamy child, and it wasn't until actually past 14 that I woke up a little intellectually and started to get noticed, and uni. And so I think it was nice to have a childhood that was okay to be dreamy. But also, we're going to talk about this later in writing the birthday book, but I do remember a poignant time. I even remember where I was standing in my lounge. I remember it vividly, and I remember asking, if we cut ourselves in half, do we all look the same on the inside? I remember asking this question to my parents, and they said, yes, you all got red blood and organs and bones. And I was like, okay. So I kind of knew we were all the same. Not saying cultural and heritage, and I'm not going to deny any of that. That is absolutely incredible, but just like the human race internally. Do you know what I mean with physical organs?
The physiology, yeah.
But I also remember really at that time thinking, well, this is obviously not all we are. Because, I really remember having that thought that this is just a body, and look at me, look at who I am, and I'm Lou, Yes. So how can I just be my body because I'm Lou, And I remember some of these little awakenings, that only a child have, but you can feel it, you can remember it.
Interesting.
Yes, as well as the other experiences we have as
growing humans. So when you left school, what did you do when you left school?
Well, when I left school, I actually traveled. I had 3 gap years, which was really unusual when I left school. And what I'm amazed about is my mum and dad never once said, why don't you do something and stop traveling? And there was no email, and there was no text, and there was no Google Maps. And so I did 1 year, and then I did my A-levels. So I kind of left school, did a gap year, and then I did my A-levels, and then I did another gap year, and then I did my degree, and then I did another gap year, and then I did my postgrad. I can't remember about that year after my postgrad. So I wanted to be 25 before I did something really serious. And 2 of those gap years I did by myself, and I lived in a kibbutz in Israel for 6 months. And I was in America a lot, the Buna camps, and I did actually come to Melbourne, and I lived in Melbourne for 6 months, and my husband lived up the road, really, really close, but we never met each other in that year. We met each other in Berlin about 5 years later, interestingly. But anyway, I did in between all the gap years and expanding and travelling, I wanted to see the world, had a big lust for it. I did an arts degree, majoring in sociology, and I did a little component in education. It was just kind of a little something.
Yeah.
And I had to find a teaching placement for 2 weeks. And I was walking through a park and there was a building and I thought, oh, it looks like a school. I'll peer in and I'll see. And it was a Saturday and someone was in the room. I thought, oh, and so I said, could I come here for 2 weeks? And it actually was a special developmental school. And they said, could you come on holiday for us for the week? Because we can't take them unless we have another adult. So I literally went 24 hours with all these children with high special educational needs, non-verbal. And I connected and deeply loved them. And there were some of these children, like the teenage boy that was very violent, but I've got a picture of him just snuggled into my lap in the sand, you know. No. And from this experience, I knew I wanted to be a special needs teacher. And so I trained as a teacher, and I was primary teacher. And then in London, my first job was in a special developmental school. And I was there for 3 years. And I often asked for the children, I always asked for the children that often people didn't ask for. But I loved them and I kept them. And again, it was a time where you just really felt some of the spirit of these children. You really did. And the connection that you could have, even when the verbal wasn't even there, you could, you know, I had one boy that had such severe epilepsy that he just had fits 30, 40 times a day. And so he couldn't go to school because mum couldn't even put the Hoover on. And we would just be very calm while it was all happening, you know, and here we go, and up we go again. And his behavior was really severe, like really severe, but because, you know, I mean, he never knew. And I was with him for 3 years, and his mum still sends me Christmas cards, still 45 years later. And so and then when I moved to Australia, I taught at Western Autistic School. And that's when I first met really challenging behaviour, like really challenging behaviour. Yeah. And at this school, we had a whole system called the least restrictive first. It was a behaviour management system, and we all learned how to decode behaviour and look underneath behaviour and see what the motive of the behaviour was. So we always saw behaviour as a communication or a puzzle, or, you know, we always had to ask why, ponder why, and then we always had to look towards the solution of the behaviour, what we'd have to teach to replace it. And my whole mindset changed on behaviour. And then we had all these tools that were the least restrictive first, e.g. 10 of them ever before timeout. Timeout was so sparing, you weren't allowed to use it unless you tried all these tools for quite a long time, documented it. This was before it got kind of normalised, you know. This was 25 years ago. Wow. And when I started teaching, I thought it was like magic. I was like, whoa, how's the teacher know to that, or redirect, or whatever it was, change the environment. And after a while of teaching there, it became second nature for me to automatically think about the timing, the trigger, the motive, what's going on for the child, what the solution would be. And so that was the whole basis of all my work with creative and positive discipline. And I've developed it in for toddlers, for children, 7 to 12-year-olds, partners. No, I'm joking. So that really was. Use it even for partners. That really was my basis. And when I had my first child, I decided I wanted to set up a Saturday club for children with Asperger's and their parents. And so I founded this club. It was called Saturday Club because they never did anything on the weekends, and that was, you know, they went somewhere. And so we had this wonderful club, and they did lots of many things like cooking and science, but they had little goals for their social skills. And the parents all met in a room and had coffee and talked to each other, and they were so isolated with their children in mainstream schools. Anyway, to cut a long story short, that got government funding, and it still runs today. Right. And serviced a lot of people. And I spoke at the World Autism Conference, which was a deep, deep honour. And I gave a lot of teacher training to decode and understand these children's worlds, to understand what they needed. And then I had my first child, and I walked into a Steiner school on an open day, and within a millisecond, it wasn't a second, it was a timeless moment, I felt like I was breathing, and I just said, train me.
Yeah.
It was just a complete timeless moment, and it felt like I was on like that life trajectory to keep going with what I was doing, and it was like, train me. And I just asked everyone, who's going to train me to be a playgroup?
I'm here. You better find somebody to train me.
Training, and so I did read a book called The Incarnating Child. It's an older style book. A lady was called Joan Salters, and I rang her. And my son was her last baby, which was a deep one, and which was wonderful. And I did start running Steiner playgroups from my home, like 2 or 3 times a week. And a very interesting thing happened, because when my son was still in a pram, so he was maybe 14 months old, and I'd only just discovered this world. I'd only just discovered it, like it was so new. And my husband and I were in London, and we held hands because we didn't know where to kind of go, and it was busy and noisy, and he was really young, and we kind of did a call out, take us somewhere we need to go today in London, like a magical mystery spiritual tour, like just lead us somewhere we need to see and be. And we just started walking after giving that little flow, and we walked for about an hour and a half through a lot of different parks. I wouldn't be able to find it again now. I don't know where we were, Hyde Park, Regent's Park. Then we got really tired, and we sat on this bench, and I never forget it, because we sat on this bench, and I thought, this bench is dedicated to someone. This bench is dedicated to Rudolf Steiner, who loved to sit on this seat in the park. And my whole body, it's doing it now. My whole body was a goosebump for like 30 minutes, all right? 30 minutes. Wow. And I didn't know I was going to write a book. I helped to found a government school that's still, 15 years later, hundreds and hundreds, thousands now of children come through. I knew none of that, none of it. So it was a really kind of beautiful moment of being in the flow. Yeah. And then there's been a lot of flow since then too. Yeah. And synchronicity, and I just don't want to say if only when I get to the end of my life. So if something's asked or presented of me, then I do it. Wow. And it's been a wonderful journey in a sense, that I've been able to help so many people with all my books, and so many people around the world. And at the beginning, Steiner didn't want to be in a box. He really didn't, and we talked about him saying, I want to change the word anthroposophy so that people think for themselves to something different every single day. And there's an amazing What is Waldorf Education book, and it says it doesn't exist because it's not a thing. It's actually principles. It's actually a, guidance that we take out to look at the child's world, to see who they are, to match. And so what's been a really deep honor for me is I started my playgroups, and then there was a poster that said we want to start a new Steiner school because the school's full and has a wait list. You've got 6 months if you don't get your baby in by 6 months. So I went to join that group, and 4 of us ended up standing the whole time to get this school up and running, me and my husband, 2 other people, the whole time. And lots of people came and went, of course. Yeah. So and that was all synchronicity too. Yeah. And my husband just said, if we don't have faith, it won't happen. And the synchronicity was incredible on that journey for that school.
Was this in Melbourne as well?
Yes. And I remember having a dream, and this bus was driving along, and all these children were running out going, let me on, let me on, let me on, and they were all jumping on, and I knew all the children were meant to be there, and some of the children are just the local children. It's their closest school. Yeah. Some of them are from other schools that haven't worked. Some of them are passionate Steiner parents that kind of come from all round, but it's a government school. So, but and then I carried on running the playgroups, and I carried on running parent education. And so this book was my first ever book. It's called Turning Tears into Laughter. And creative discipline for the toddler and preschool use. And it's got this nice cover, and it went into Kmart and Myers and all the department stores and completely sold out, but it is actually my Steiner playgroup in the photos.
Oh, that's so cool.
It's a secret weapon. There it is. 5 Mile Press.
What's that?
5 Mile Press. It was a big Australian publisher at the time.
Oh, very cool.
And that kind of started 6 books later.
Yeah. Amazing.
Anyway, and everything that's come from that.
So did you were you a teacher in the Steiner school, or were you involved as a parent / founder?
So I have taught, and I helped each class as they came and developed, and I taught a couple of classes for a year, and and sometimes there was pregnancies or something sudden happened, and I'd go in and take that class for 3 terms.
Yeah.
And I supported all of the teachers and gave the teacher PD. And
wow.
You can only do it once. Creating something from the ground up, it takes a lot.
Oh yeah.
And but you know, when you're passionate, you kind of get a new energy that you don't realize you have.
Totally.
And yeah.
Starting a school, I know that there are, you know, in New Zealand there's a group in Gisborne that really want to get a school up and running. That takes a lot of will. It'd be interesting that
a lot of selfless service. You have to be ready for a lot of selfless service. So because that's what it is. We painted the corridors, we weeded the gardens, we put on the fete, we raised every single bit of money, and not just once, for a good few years. Yeah,
interesting. Cool. Well,
so you have to have a certain energy flowing with you, you know?
For sure. That's so true. So you've kind of told us how you found Waldorf education and got really involved in it, which is so interesting. Thank you for sharing that story.
That's okay.
I wonder, this is kind of taking us in a slightly different direction, but it is kind of included in it's relevant to what you've just spoken about. I wonder if you were able to describe your spiritual path, if you felt comfortable doing so.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I've had... yes, I don't mind.
Yeah.
When I look back into my childhood, I look at my parent role models, but both of them weren't in an organised religion, if you say what I mean. They were both really good people, very caring people. And I remember my dad saying to me, any religion, and if they go to church every day, I honour you totally. But I remember him just keep saying to me, you don't need to go into a building to be a good person. Yeah. And I remember him saying those words to me, but he has a lot of values, my dad. He's a good person. You know, if you say the word, you know, he's a good man, you know, or a good woman, or a good person. Yes.
Yeah.
And my mum was very caring. So I suppose I wasn't put into a religion, if you get what I'm saying. I really was, and it was very loose Church of England.
Yeah.
But in my 20s, so before my own children, I strongly wanted to look into spirituality, and I joined the Theosophical Fellowship. And I was with them for quite a few years, a long, long time. And I had a group, well, not a long time. I mean, it was, you know, a good few years, maybe 5 years. And I was with a group, and we would meet every week, and we would do incredible meditations, and I learned all of the information of what they were put through to the spiritual worlds, which comes in all ways of looking at it, whatever viewpoint you can see the same. And then there was a pivotal time for me, which I started not to enjoy it so much. And I started to feel sometimes that it made you feel like you had to be in this organization or group. Otherwise you wouldn't be on your spiritual path. Like, it was almost like you put your spiritual journey into the group. So if you left it, you would no longer be spiritual or on your journey. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do.
And I could feel this doubt within me that I needed to keep actually in this group, and I got very stressed about it, really stressed about it, because that's how much I, you know, wanted to feel like I was developing that part. But you're developing anyway as a human being, you know. But there was a time, I hope this makes an understanding to you, but I remember going to this beautiful Buddhist monk came, very highly evolved, and I went to his 3-day workshop, and I went to him, and at the end of a lecture I walked up to him. And I said, I hope I can ask you this, but I'm really not sure if I should be in my spiritual group anymore. I I really don't know about it. It's causing me a lot of anxiety. And it was a timeless moment again, because he turned around and he looked me straight in the eye and he said, "You look like a beautiful, intelligent person." Thank you. He said, "If you don't enjoy your spiritual practice, you will get more spiritual development from sitting on the beach for the afternoon." And then he just walked off. And I was like, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. It hit me. It hit me about living with gratitude in the present moment on the earth, you know, with that enjoyment, you know, in that good way. And I did leave, you know, because there was some funny things happening. And sometimes they happen, and not saying that, but they do happen in groups or with people, you know, we're all human beings.
Humans, yeah.
We're all humans. And I think from that moment, if you wanted to say, so I have all the knowledge of that world, but now if you wanted me to know what my religion, what it is for me, it's flow, it's heart, it's presentness, it's gratitude. Yeah, so it's almost like you have that. And now I understand sometimes the flow of, and I can sense it, you know. I can sense when my body moves really slow, doesn't want to do it, and then how it feels when my heart's kind of jiggling there, and there's a flow that I somehow can get into sometimes, even in the day, and then it works that way, and it really is hard, you know. I'm a Love Button ambassador now, which is a wonderful thing to be, and I really love knowing that, you know, I just read someone wrote a children's book and they asked me to look at it, and it was an amazing book, but it was about love, and we come from love and we'll go back to love. And I like to, you know, so I have that kind of heart feeling, that presentness, that gratefulness. Of course I believe totally in the spiritual worlds, of course I do, you know. That's just normal for me to think that that I'm here for a short time with this life, with things to get done, which I'm trying to do, to help people, to enjoy it. We need to enjoy the earth plane. I remember Rudolf Steiner saying that it was a little bit of a cop-out. I don't know how to quote this because someone told me, so I don't know if we can find this. But to the words for people that want to kind of leave here, like, you know, this is my last life, I've got to leave here, like, this is bad in spiritual words, it's great. He was like, that, you got that the wrong way round. Yeah. You're meant to be bringing heaven to earth. That's your job. Yeah. This is the honor to be here. And for me, working with children and seeing children, because they're just incredible, they really are. I mean, to me, they really are, when you understand their worlds and what they need, and being in family, being belonging, whatever that family is, you chose each other, it's single parenting or blended family or same-sex. I use that word family in everything. You know, the love and understanding we generate through the hard times and the misunderstanding and the miscommunication and the being human, you know, this is richness. And so when I just have gratitude for my pillow before I get out of bed, because it's held my head and it's really soft and cuddly, you know? I walk a beach and I'm like, thank you, this is incredible, you know. That's a lovely thing, you know. So I hope I answered that in a way. So to beautiful. Me, you do all that and you expand into knowledge, but you have to come back into the heart. Yeah, you have to bring that back into the heart, and so I have that. It's not like I work on it. I kind of try and sit in it, if that makes sense. And that's not an easy thing to do. But
practice in itself, isn't it? Just being in.
Yeah, and I like to cultivate that. You know, I like to cultivate the feeling of your heart. Just breathe into it a bit. Yeah. With gratitude for the small things and the little things around here. Yeah. And I see this as a transitional world, of course. But we're here to, as they say, bring those elements here. It's not always easy. No. Any growth is okay. A little bit at a time. One step forward. Yeah. Dance back, step forward. Yeah. And to me, it's a life of service. I mean, I do try and I do do things that I know keep me in balance, and I feel awe and wonder, like walking beaches and seeing autumnal trees and connecting with people and celebrating them as unique human beings. I love that. But I'm here also to see if I have a voice and I can help someone, then I'll use it.
Yeah.
So that helps. That helps me.
Yeah.
That gives me joy.
Yeah.
So I haven't told a lot of people that. You're all hearing things that really haven't been told before, like parch benches and different things, but that's the
really
truth
special.
of it.
Yeah.
And that's and I'll always keep building that sensation in my heart. And with my feet on the ground, with gratitude. And I know all the other worlds are there. Of course they are.
It's so beautiful when you can articulate it the way that you have. So it's simple, but it's not easy, you know. Or these, you strip away as much as you can of the labels and the dogma and the intellect and all that kind of stuff. That's all fine, but yeah, it's just special when I can listen to someone like you talk about spiritual path, or I could say the term spiritual path, or just actually what's your way of being, you know, and you just kind of just described your way of being, which is really special. So thank you for that.
That's all right. And I'm still human. I get anxiety and I get doubt and I get everything else. We all get in our own way. That's the whole point, you know. And that's why we need. Yeah, we're a human being having a human existence. But you know, I love just sometimes watching people have conversations. I love that. Even in my own family, just watching two people have a conversation. It's like, or watching, you know, once I sat outside a shop because the dog was sitting there and I could see the dog like just, and I thought, I have to be here when the owner comes back. I want to watch the dog. That's a very strange thing. But sometimes we miss all these little moments, which are actually quite beautiful in our own homes, in our own life. You know what I'm saying? Life. And so, yeah, thankfulness is a good thing.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
We can't stay in our heads. If we stay in our heads, we can't be in our hearts. So.
No. Heads are a good place to be for, you know, but yes, you're right. You need to bring it into the heart and onto the ground.
Exactly.
Stuff.
Yeah. They're great. Heads are great. We all need thinking and planning and intuition and impulse. They're wonderful. They're actually beyond the head. They're like, But if we can just all spend 5 minutes just simply breathing in feeling a love in our heart, if we can just do that for 5 minutes a day and say 3 things we, you know what I mean? If we could just do that.
Yeah, it does make a big difference.
Yes.
So love is key.
It is.
You've kind of, I'm not quite sure if you answered this question or not, but what actually led you to writing the books?
Well, this is another thing that I haven't told many people on the planet. But so I never thought about writing a book, all right? I never said, I'm going to write a book. That was never in the equation. I never would have believed I could have, in a sense, and I never would have put myself to do that. So it was a couple of times in my life I've had those kind of experiences where they're not dreams, but they're information coming in a sense. So it was actually, and this is probably the reason I was with the Theosophical Fellowship too for a while, but I was at a weekend workshop. It was on angels, a whole weekend workshop, believe it or not. And I woke up in the morning and I just had a book. The book was just there. Just there. It wasn't a dream, it was there. Happy child, happy home. And I was pregnant with my first son. I wasn't even a mother. I was pregnant. And I remember it because I sat up in bed and said, everyone go to breakfast. I got to write down this book that's in my head. And my friend, who's a friend now, obviously friend now, she always said, we all thought you were just having a moment, Lou, like really ungrounded. We all just went, oh, look at Lou. And it's very difficult to say this because I don't want to say it in some ways. I don't want to be judged, but if I'm going to put it out there, Angels was in the whole of Angels was there. I never wrote that. It was just there. I just wrote it from whatever was there. And then all
this one.
Yes. Yeah. And also the chapters of Happy Child, Happy Home. So it was different to a dream. It was just a really kind of strong knowing. I hadn't thought about writing a book. It was just there. So I just jotted it all down, wrote those words down, jotted it down. And it wasn't for 10 years until it came out.
Wow.
I mean,
why is that?
So because I hadn't even become a parent.
Yeah, true. A parenting book and not be a parent. Yeah.
So I actually bought a tape recorder because we didn't have phones, did we? So I bought this little tape recorder and I taped and I messaged myself of everything that worked, everything I worked with parenting, everything that I went on. I wrote notes on bits of paper everywhere. And through my absolute search of parenting and working out and striving and making mistakes and seeing what worked, that was born. It was born. And in the back of my mind, I always thought, I better try and put this book out. In case I was meant to write it, I better try and put it out, you know? So almost the whole way, it was almost like a little game. It was like, I just better try that because I better try that. I don't want to get to the end and I was meant to. So I knew I had to do some knocking on doors, but I really wasn't attached to whether they opened or not. You know, it was just kind of that feeling of, well, maybe I'm just meant to put this out. So I wrote this big book. And it was actually preconception to 7. The preconception to 2 hasn't been born yet. And it was preconception to 7. It was a big book. And Angels. And Angels was sitting there. And it was just flow again. Flow. So my husband had a lot of clients, and one of them was a real crime writer. Can you believe that? Real crime writer. And they invited us round to dinner. This is where you have to wait for flow. And right at the end of dinner, the whole dinner party with all these fabulous people and nice conversation about stuff in the world. And as we were leaving, he turned around and said, Lou's written a book. And she was a good person, right? She was you know what I understand by good person? That's what I'm talking about with spirituality. She was a good person. And she went, Lou, I have to introduce you to the publishers. She was with 5 Mile Press. It was a media. Let me introduce you. And I'm like, really? I'm shooting them an email saying, I've met this person. And so off I went to 5 Mile Press. You wouldn't have thought those two would have intertwined to the journey. She was a good person. So she started this whole journey. And we sat down, we had a lunch date, and I gave them this book, Preconception 7, mainstream big publisher.
Wow.
And they said, it's a little alternative in places. And I said, would you like Creative Discipline, just as a standalone book? Because everybody needs help with their toddlers and toddler parenting. And they said, we would. And Turning Tears into Laughter was born. And it went into a parenting series along with toilet training and everything else. And it was a secret weapon. And then what happened was, because of this book, I was invited into libraries and everywhere, because I'm a bit of an expert on toddlers. And I don't like the word expert because I just feel I'm a human being, but I will put that with me and toddlers because I've been there for a long time. I can decode tantrums. Wow. I can tell you what they're about, and I can tell you how to eliminate them. So it was really quite, fun. And I did so many library presentations and so much in that world. And then it was about, when was this published? This is really interesting. This was published in, when was it published? It was published in, when you're looking for something and you can't find it, 2010.
Wow.
2010. So it was, how many years later? I will tell you how many years later. This book's had 5 print runs and it's in 3 languages.
Good book.
It's amazing. I'm very grateful for that. 2014, this was post-published. It was 4 years later. And I had done a lot more work, obviously, in the Steiner worlds, a lot of teaching, 3 different schools, teaching at and classes, all things. And I said to my husband one night, I only gave them creative discipline out of the book. I've got a book still. I've got a manuscript still.
Ah, yes.
Maybe I should send it to some publishers.
Yeah.
And so I did. I sent it to the 3 main publishers, and this is the largest Steiner publisher in the world, Florist Books.
Yeah.
There's a few.
Yeah.
And because I'd written Turning Tears, you know, I was already out there presenting, had an audience and everything, and they came back within a matter of weeks. And they said, we want your writing style, we need your writing style. And I've had 4 books with them now, and they just keep saying, you're doing the same writing style, aren't you, Lou? You're doing the same writing style. And I said, yes, which is no shoulds, no musts, practical tips, so many ideas for transforming, you know, and bringing all this wonder in. And what is so incredible is that all of my books are in the libraries. And I have given hundreds of library talks on all of my books. Twin organizations, governments, Chinese men's groups, you name it, I've been asked to talk, because this message is so needed, and it's everybody reads it. They can see me as a special needs teacher, they can see me as a they can see me as whatever they want to see. But the message is universal, and it really helps parents. So from getting florists, this was so successful for them in the sense of the print runs, and because it just really was, you know, parents were like, it's my little Bible, because I can just turn a page and do a tip and it worked, you know, it was very practical.
Yeah.
So I then offered them Turning Tears. 5 Mile Press had been amalgamated, Turning Tears had sold out, and I asked them for the rights back, and they gave them to me, which was really good. And so Turning Tears Laughter is now Creative Discipline Connected Family. Transforming tears, tantrums and troubles while staying close to your children, but it's also had like, you know, it's twice the size from all the different parent stories and workshops that have happened since then. And this has had quite a few print runs. And then they asked me, they emailed and asked me whether I would write Through the Rainbow, a Waldorf birthday story for children. So that was a huge honor, because they asked me. I mean, I didn't put this out there. They just, and I went, whoa. And they said, we've been told it might offend people because, you know, it's been an oral traditional story.
Yeah.
And I said, of course it will offend people.
Let's do it.
I said, but that doesn't mean we don't put it in a book, because all those children that will access this book that have never heard the story, and it's in libraries too. And I said, I will only write this book if you choose an artist that is pure wet on wet. And so there isn't this caricature of it. And I said, I will only write this book, and because I've had a few books with them, I can like kind of say, I said, I will only write this book if there's no mum or dad, because it could be 2 mums, 2 dads, single parents.
I like that about it.
Into loving arms, because they could be adopted. And I said, and every skin tone has to be in every picture, as well as looking like that gender neutral. And they went, yes, 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 yes. And so, and then I said, we don't have heaven and earth, because this is the human being. This is what I'm talking to you about now, my, you know. And so I checked it with people from all different faiths, and they said, yes, this book is our book. And I've had emails with people thanking me from IVF, because they went alone and had a child, and so they were so thankful with the way it was written. And same-sex couples and different people from their different religious faiths, they've all said their children feel it's their book.
Yeah, they do.
So if it was going to come to earth once, I felt like I had to make it come for every child on the earth.
Yeah,
because they came through the Rainbow Bridge. And I suppose my background in Theosophy too, you know, it was wonderful to write this story. And that as if you have this story, so many people tell me they cry as an adult when they read the story. I had this beautiful man from Chinese, an Asian man, and he couldn't speak very much English, but he kept pointing to the book and doing this.
So sweet. Oh.
All he kept doing, because
Yeah.
it touches people deeply, because there's the truth of this. And our children chose us, you know, for the reasons that we belong together. When you're having a really hard parenting day, just remember that.
Yeah, get that book out and read it, even to yourself. Such a nice
So
book.
thank you for that. And then I also was asked to do Growing Children, Thriving Children, which is 7 to 12-year-olds, which is, to me, understanding childhood. The first thing we need to do is understand the stage they're in. That's going to be enormous for you. And then how we connect in those stages, and then how, because it changes, and then how we bring our values in those stages. And so pretty much all my books follow that theme of practical tips in understanding and connecting and bringing through our creative discipline. Thank you for asking me these questions. And in the end, when was this published? How interesting is this? We're playing a game of when things were published. 2009. Okay. So I put this out. And now the interesting thing about this book is that I asked all these different illustrators from all different Steiner parents. They all illustrate it beautifully.
Yeah.
And it's in rhyme, and a little description of all the different angels in the, like garden angels and our guardian angels and our earth angels. And people love it. And people have told me that they had cancer and they kept it on their bedside table and it helped them, adults.
Yeah, I can see how that would happen.
Children tell me that they always had it read to them at bed and to sleep. People do love it. Now, the interesting thing, I self-publish it, and so I've sold a lot of copies, and they were all for charity, because I don't feel it's my book. It's not my book, really.
Yeah.
But then the interesting thing is I sent it to some Steiner publishers. This is Winner Stone's beautiful Steiner publisher years ago. We're talking 8 years ago. And they emailed me 5 years ago and said, oh, it's been sitting on the desk for a long time. Would you still like it published? And I said, yes.
Yeah.
And then 3 years later, they said, do you want it published? We're ready now. And so it's now actually officially published with Winner Stone.
Yeah.
So sometimes it takes a long time.
But they come out when they're meant to come out, don't they? They come out when they're meant to come out.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you have a book for teens? Are you going to do a teenager book?
Well, I've been the teen editor. I've been the teen editor for Juno magazine for years.
Oh, have you?
So I have a column. There's so many magazines. So I've been writing on teens for a long time. While my teens were teens,
Yeah.
I write 6 times a year.
Yeah.
2 boxes of these. So I was 2 boxes of them I wrote. So I was a
All
teenage
right.
columnist.
Yeah.
So everybody asks me that, and I will do a teen book. I do teen workshops at the moment, because I do workshops on terrific toddlers, happy children, 3 to 7, thriving children, and I do teenage. So I do workshops.
Yeah.
But I know what my next book will be. It's already here. I've just got to put the proposal in. There'll be a few more books.
Yeah, I'm sure there will be.
This one came out at the beginning of COVID.
Oh, yes. I've been hearing good things about that book.
101 conversation starters, all on connection. Lovely emails about that one.
That's so nice. And if you're listening to it, it's a book about, and it's got little questions. 111. I like that number. Fun questions to ask around the dinner table. Happy Families Table Talk.
Yes, Happy Families Table Talk. 111 fun questions, and it's really for if you're 5 to if you're 95, and everybody wants to be heard, and everyone wants to belong.
That's so true.
And I found things out about my 83-year-old dad that I never knew when I asked him some questions. And so it really creates family bonds and communication and laughter, and just with a question a bit at mealtime a day. Fun ones. It's beautifully illustrated too. Let's move on.
Cool. Let's. So we've been talking about your books, but I wonder if Have we haven't really talked actually we talked about the content of Happy Child, Happy Home, who's it for, what's the message, and what age does it cover? We kind of...
So Happy Child, Happy Home is called Conscious Parenting and Creative Discipline. That's what it's subtitle. And it's really about giving children a childhood, you know. So this magical stage from 3 to 7, they are not in our world whatsoever. We can't think of them as little people, adults.
No.
They're in the present moment. That's an amazing thing to be, isn't it? In the present moment. We
all want to be there.
But they're there the whole time. It's the present. And they got the gift of imagination. 3 to 7, of course. And they believe in wonder, don't they? They believe, and so it's really about giving children a childhood. So it has daily rhythms, weekly rhythms, yearly rhythms, storytelling, craft, 2 chapters on play. Really easy. Well, and it will create all those memories that we talked about easily. And it does have creative discipline in there as a little chapter.
That's useful for me. I enjoyed that.
I know, I did workshops on it. People bring me this book and they've highlighted it and they've sticky noted it. That's a big honour for me.
Yeah.
Give children, you know, it's just giving them the foundation of the human life is childhood. And so rhythms create an inner sense of security, yes? They're anchors, and play is creative thinking for later on. It's incredible, yeah?
Very much
and
so.
Storytelling is like magic for them. We've been doing it since the beginning of time. So I just want to make every parent feel that they can tell a story, you know, that they know what a child needs in a play environment, that rhythms are actually investments for the future because they're really giving them love and security, and they take 3 minutes and they don't cost anything. And just lots and lots of the games that make children's eyes sparkle. They smile, so that's a good one.
It is. So that book is pretty amazing, and I recommend people buy it. But I wonder if we can go into more of what actually is the nature of a small child. And I wonder if you could describe what the nature of a baby is, and what the nature of a young child is, and why these years are so precious in a Waldorf context, or actually in a lot of contexts. Why do we need to protect this, and why do we not just see them as little adults and treat them as little autonomous adults?
Once we have an understanding of them, it's amazing. You know, I do a terrific toddler course online and in a Zoom thing, and I have parents say, I fell in love with my toddler all over again, because they just understood. We're so busy that we don't really see their world. So Through the Rainbow has that beautiful journey of the soul, you know, saying I want to visit this land, and having a dream and choosing their family and bringing their special gifts through the rainbow and into loving arms. So when you hold a baby, there's a reverence, and Rudolf Steiner says, receive them in reverence. That's what he says. Reverence is the word for the first 7 years. Educate them in love, let them go forth in freedom. And they're very profound, those 3 stages, if you go through the whole, like I have, 22 years. So there's a reverence that you know, that baby there's only one of them in the whole world. I mean, how amazing, you know, and they come at the beginning and come to us to parent them, chosen that, very close to the spiritual worlds. And if I say it in a temperament way, I love talking about temperaments, but so a baby's in a phlegmatic stage, which is calm, which is water. Even their body's very fleshy. That is the phlegmatic style of body. And if we only knew that, then we would greet them with reverence. It's so close, you know, so close into the spiritual world that they've been, and they're here. I mean, how amazing is that? And also they've chosen us, or in that family, but also that they have this life that they've planned out, in a sense, or some of it, or, you know, of here. You know, obviously we have free will, but you know what I mean. They've come, and here they are, And then there's this reverence that they're just the beginning of a waking up process, aren't they? Yeah, really. You'll see that in that first 6 weeks. They're here, but they're not really here. Yeah, they're still open with the frontal. Yeah. And so in the traditions, they always had a branch on the door, and people brought food, and the the mother and the child stayed for 6 weeks. And a lot of maternal childcare nurses will say, well, colic is just overstimulation of the senses. Yeah, they can't digest colic. Or they can't digest all of the sense impressions because, you know, they come in. You know, they shouldn't really be awake too much. No, they don't. They sleep a lot, aren't they, in that transition period, that first 6 weeks into that 3 months. And so that's why in the Steiner wards we put 2 cloths around the cradle, which are purple and bluey, and so you feel like they're still in the womb, looking through the womb and waking up very slowly. Milk and rocking and a quiet pace, and you know, that connection that you can get in you rest, because it's an enormous thing to give birth at any time, with the portals of life, birth and passing back, you know. And so there's that reverence. And I think if everyone was taught that, if you understand temperaments, you understand what phlegmatic means, which is calm, peaceful, like a still lake, slow, that you would just take that baby in that way. Yeah. And you would hold that baby in that way, and that you would rock and you would sing and you would slowly come out into the house and slowly go into the garden, and that's going to be really nourishing for you. Yeah, because that's what they want, don't they? They're waking up in their senses. The touch is waking them up. They smell very early and know your scent, and it's quite amazing to see what they truly need. It's a slow unfolding into the world. And you, and milk, and rocking with them. And then what people get really shocked about is the toddler. Because the baby goes from phlegmatic, you know, and you've got to work out the cries. Like, is this cry? Cry is just a primal reptilian brain. I'm physically, emotionally uncomfortable. So we've got to decode that and try and work that out. Yeah. To find that out and their rhythms. But so there can be still tricky things in that, of course, but they, and I found breastfeeding the most incredible thing. Personally, I know some people can't do it, but that first breastfeed was that moment again that shot me straight into the present moment. Like, because you kind of, it's very big giving birth. You can pretty much leave.
Yeah.
And we got this beautiful slowness, but the toddler is what people get really shocked about, because you know, people are not ready for the toddler stage. All right. And to me, it is deeply offensive to call it terrible twos. To me, that is just a complete misunderstanding of what a toddler is.
Yeah.
And so I changed it to my course called Terrific Twos, just from this understanding to redo that. And so the toddler stage is what we call a choleric stage, all right? And that's a natural temperament stage of childhood. And so their body goes choleric, they get straight shoulders, they get on a mission, and their will comes, and the birth of their I comes, the I can.
Yeah.
And I talk about the toddler brain, which is basically, I need to move all the time to fire my brain up so they are not still for a second. And I need to show that I'm an I can by doing cause and effect over matter, which is knocking things down, putting things in and out, you know, pulling things along, pushing things along, putting in a bag. It's not imaginative play. It's actually cause and effect over matter. And they really need to do that. Launch something through an air. And the third thing is, they obviously, human need, they have to be connected to you. They have to be. So they'll follow you in the bath, the toilet. And they know that touch is also really allowing them to experience, this is where I end and the world begins. So they ask for touch a lot, you know, often. They hold their hand. And I think it is a meditation to watch a toddler. It's a meditation, because all you'll see is 3 things. You'll see movement, you'll see in and out. I was in a library. I mean, I'm talking to you in this way, but in a library, you know, I say the same information and I'll go, watch the toddler.
Yeah.
And this toddler's like, opening and shutting a door, opening and shutting a door. Then they're going over, taking everything out the bag, then over, taking everything. What they're doing is cause and effect over matter. Yeah, it's there now. Yeah. So if people can clear up their room, so if they don't want it touched, then don't have it in touching, area.
Yeah.
And then you actually create little baskets in your shower, and your kitchen has a door where they can go in and out, and so they can be with you and they like putting pegs in a peg basket. They like putting icy pole things in the container. It's all in and out.
Yeah.
They want to push it trolley along, and so I give whole lists of these toddler needs, and a lot of it is helping you, feeding the washing machine, dirty clothes.
Yeah.
That's an in and out. Posting a letter. So I go through all the stuff you do. They can just join you with, and it's doing their wonderful I can. And then I really do. The two reasons for tantrums are us thwarting their will, their I can, and overtiredness and overstimulation.
Yeah.
Emotional meltdown.
Yeah.
And so I give a lot of tips. My terrific toddler course, people love that. It changes their life. And I also give a lot of connection tips, because toddlers, the way we connect with toddlers is totally different to any other stage. They really think that we've gone and we've come back.
Yeah.
They really think this is a dicky bod that's flown away. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
right.
I teach a lot of the touch games. I teach a lot of the traditional fun games. I talk about all the little touch games, connection games we put in the day, after the nappy change, in the morning, at night. So we're truly connected. Then I talk about contented toddlers with their breathing in and out rhythm, so they're not overtired and connected to us. And then I talk about happy toddlers with all the things they can put in and out and play with. And what we need, and it's often an egg box. And so they really get that. And then I talk about terrific toddlers, which is totally really looking at these tantrums and really understanding that it's often that we can teach them empathy at a really young age, like looking after, and then come and bang on the spoon in the cupboard. Yeah. They come and throw, so we can show them where their impulse can go. And we can show them how to look after, because a lot of the tantrums are us simply thwarting a natural impulse for them that's not in the right place. Sometimes, we have to redirect them into something else too. We can say hands down, obviously, and guide, but it's a wonderful thing. I love talking on toddlers. And then childhood, I talk about the 3 gifts that come with childhood, and the toddler stage is so short. It's to know about it and what to do. And then childhood, they have another 3 gifts, which are the present moment. They're in the now, which is why when you tell them to put their shoes on, they see their train and they're at their train. It's not their fault, they're just in the now.
Yeah.
And so their time becomes the way you put them to bed, the way you have a meal, the way you greet them. Their day of the week become your baking day, your walk day. And so rhythms hold the whole universe together. And when we have these simple rhythms, they are security and trust and predictability. But they also will make sure we can put loving games in. Every ordinary moments become extraordinary with our little morning greeting, filling your love tank until it's full. With our bedtime, going to bed, as a horse to the stable, our teethy towers. And so they're in the now, they're in imagination. Imagination is incredible. Albert Einstein says it's more important than knowledge, because it's creative thinking.
Yeah.
So they truly believe from 3, when you see it start 3 to 7, they truly believe that, that block is soap, that block is a golden coin. It's not a block, it's soap. So we don't have that. We know we're pretending, and it is phenomenal to watch children with that gift.
Yeah.
And then the last gift is that they fundamentally believe the world is good. They totally do.
Yeah.
And that is so precious. And they believe in wonder. They don't have logical thinking. There was a wonderful story that this boy went to the MCG and they'd started to tap down the security guard, tapping down. And so the security guard did this, meaning put your arms up, and the boy hugged him. The did this. And they believe a man in a white beard can go around the world in one night, pulled by reindeers that fly. That's completely believable to them.
Yeah.
Because they do magic.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's truth in that. It's St. Nicholas, of course, and love childhood, because it's a love of the three gifts. Amazing. So a lot of my work is to make sure that they have rhythms, which is, you might be rhythms, but I'm actually talking love. That's what I'm talking. Your heart is a rhythm, and your daily rhythm will be love. And we'll have moments of love, but also will give security, anchors, roots, and really talking about setting up play and demystifying that, because it's quite simple, really. It's not hard. And watching them, and then all the ways we bring in wonder with storytelling, craft, seasons, and then you see them.
Yeah.
And when they have rhythms, you see them go out in the world with an inner sense of security. When they have imaginative play, they have creative thinking. And when they have wonder, e.g. not the adult world brought in too much, you see them as adults still going, oh, look at the sunset.
Yeah.
They carry the seed of wonder. They carry all those seeds into the human life. It's a really good foundation. So that's happy child, happy home, and creative discipline, connected family is understanding behaviour and teaching your values in a positive way. Thank you for asking.
Well,
then we had to do another podcast, but what happens at 7 with the change of teeth, and 9, profound.
So profound. Yeah, we will have to do another podcast. Yeah,
we're not going to go there, but that is incredible, and understanding the teenage brain is incredible too.
I mean, you kind of mentioned the discipline thing. I wondered if we could just define the difference, which I think some parents get a bit confused about, in terms of, well, the word discipline can scare a lot of parents off, but there is a difference between like authoritative and authoritarian discipline.
Yes.
I remember that from Teachers College.
Yes.
So maybe you could describe that in a parenting context and why discipline is important.
So people say to me, Lou, don't put discipline on your books because people don't like it. Well, it's actually on 3 of my books, 2 covers and a 3rd one, because people hear the word discipline and think punishment. They don't separate the 2. And in fact, discipline is from a Latin word from disciple. All right, it's from disciple. So all we do is add the I. That's the Latin word. That's the root word. So fundamentally, it means to guide and to teach. That's what it means. Does not mean to punish in any way, shape, or form. To punish means to punish, and that means to create fear, harm, and shame. So to me, discipline is a holding, and it's also, if I was going to rewrite the word discipline, I would mean it means to care, but in the way that I'm talking about it, meaning to guide and to teach. Of course, children need that, don't they? They need guiding. Of course they do.
Yeah.
They need teaching. So if you can realize it actually means to guide, to teach, and you are solution based, even with our wording, with a little bit of empathy, just not adult stuff, not lines, just a little bit, like look after. That's empathy, and that's a solution. Yes, then that's the epitome of teaching and caring and guiding. And children understand that you only put boundaries out because you care. That's the bottom line. If anyone disciplines in the word that I'm saying it's because we care. That we care that Nanny's toy isn't broken and she spent money. We care that your body has got rocket fuel in it and healthy. We care that we're a family and we look after each other. So I often really talk about thinking about what you care about, which is that we look after each other. That's a good value.
Yeah. Being kind.
That we're safe to each other and other people. That's basically look after when they're young. That we're healthy, and that level of kindness. And so there's with those 3 parenting styles, basically it's how much control and how much warmth we give when we step in to put a boundary out. Okay. How much control and how much warmth. So an authoritarian will have 100% control but no warmth. That's what will happen, 100%. And they will use a reward or a punishment or a threat to change the behavior. and they don't actually look underneath the behaviour and work out the reason or the motive, and they don't actually even teach the solution to the behaviour. Yeah, so you see it all the time, and it ends up empty threats. And what ends up happening is it gets very growly. The child will self-talk. I didn't mean to do that. That wasn't really naughty, particularly if they're labelled, you know, like naughty. And there's no resolution either. There's no kind of let's do a redo. Oh, that's the way we do the cat, you know, or there's no let's make amends. It's a clean slate. So you can get stuck in that, you know?
Yeah.
A bit of self-talk. But what happens is children will end up not caring. And I meet so many parents where the child is at the stage they don't care about going to their room, don't care. And then there's kind of a loss of control. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, the other swing is the permissive passive parenting. And that is 100% warmth and no control. And almost kind of understanding so much like, oh, they're just tired. But no, you're tired, but you don't hit people. I mean, you know, there has to be a boundary there. And this sense of parenting, I don't want to go into it too much. I have to give quick answers. It will be a really long podcast. Yeah. But they tend to give all choices to the child. Yeah. What do you want to eat? What do you want to wear? You know, where do you want to go now? What should we do today? And the child thinks the whole of life is a choice. And the minute something is not quite in their choice, then there's a big meltdown. Yeah. And so with this style of parenting, sometimes they're a bit afraid to parent, to bring in those values, because they don't want to be authoritarian. So they don't do anything. Whereas there is a lot we can do here in the middle, what we call loving authority, Rudolf Steiner called, or I call it creative discipline, or it's authoritative. And the studies show that these parents can feel exhausted. You know, it's like the house, and as I said, in lots of ways, it's very stressful to have choices. I mean, even going in a restaurant, what am I going to eat? You know, someone has to hold the child, hold the rhythm, hold the environment, give a choice or two if it's tricky, and then you feel they have power. So in the middle, the psychologists call it authoritative, and it basically, this parenting style has control and warmth. And people don't realize that even when you put a boundary out, you can do it with warmth, but you're still putting a boundary out. Yeah. So there's so many ways, and that is creative discipline. That's what I learned, as I said at the beginning of this whole podcast I talked to you about, and how I've rewritten all of that to make it perfect sense and easily translated into all the everyday issues you might have, like eating, bedtime, getting dressed in a hurry. And that is creative discipline, connected family. And there's another chapter on it in growing children, thriving children. And there's two things that an authoritative parent or a creative discipline does that the other two styles don't do. One, they look at the motive behind the behavior and trigger, and I do individual consultations with parents, and I don't even see them via Zoom unless they've kept a diary for a week and they've told me when the behavior happens, what the trigger was, so I can see the picture, they see the picture, and it teaches a solution. And neither of those two do that either. And the first way we do it is redirect to the solution. And our wording is really, once we get used to it, it flows like off our tongue. But our wording is often, you know, even if I said to a teenager, can you get off the mud just squashing the plants? They feel told off. If I said to them, can you walk on the path? Hey, Jenny, I know you're chatting to Jenny. Can you walk on the path? Because I just saw they planted that. Oh, sorry, Lou. I'm saying the same thing. Do you understand? Yeah. Stop pulling the cat's tail. Oh, if you tickle it under the chin, the whiskers smile. I'm saying the same thing. Yes, but it's we're guiding, aren't we? We're caring, and I that's my speciality. I give workshops on it. I write books on it. It can be quite eye-opening because there's 10 strategies that we can use every day, and they're all going to put our values into the world and to our children, and they're a sliding scale all the way to the end, of course. But some people say to me, I'm really worried because that child's not held. okay? And they use the word held. And they go, I'm really worried because they're not held. And I spent a while going, this is a lovely word. What do they mean? What does held mean? And to me, it is that they're not held with rhythms. Really not held, you know, with their bedtime rhythm, mealtime rhythms, and they're not held with their creative discipline. You know, because we care, and they do realize at the end of all this, and the way we word it, they realize we care. I remember we can do an hour and a half, 3 hours on that, but in a nutshell, if you kind of get that feeling, then you'll get that feeling that we look behind the behavior, and we actually find the solutions to the behavior. We lead children into those solutions. There's many other steps in the process, of course, many other steps, in a sense of what we can try, and positive reinforcement, but it works. It works.
It's so cool. So nice.
And it's a happier day for parents, and it's a happier day for children.
That's what we want.
For sure.
To finish for today, do you have any closing thoughts that you could share with us, or perhaps a little bit from your book?
Yes. When I write books, I tend to write, I like to find one line or one saying which epitomizes the whole book. And I'll end you with 2 verses, if I may. And happy child, happy home. I read this verse when I was not even married, okay? This is another one of those synchronicities. I wasn't even married, so I hadn't even had children. I was in the Cozy Kangaroo in Bright. It's a cafe, might still be there. And I remember reading this saying and just being, truth hit me. And I was like, wow. And when I read my book, my Happy Child, Happy Home 10 years later, I rang them and asked them if they would go over and look at the poster and read the exact words to me. And luckily the poster was still there. And it said, 100 years from now, it will not matter what my bank account was, the sort of house I lived in, or the kind of car I drove. But the world may be a different place because I was important to the life of a child. That's Forrest Whitcraft. And I just loved that, because it's like, what is important to the life of a child? And that's why it's open to Happy Child, Happy Home, because most of the ideas in this book do, as I said, don't cost money, and they don't take a huge amount of time, but they will make the memories, as we talked about at the beginning. They are what is important. And, you know, with our rhythms and our connection and our play. And so that's one. And when I wrote Creative Discipline Connected Family, I found one saying which I felt summed up the whole book. There are little sayings that open every chapter, but here's the one for the introduction. The rules of parents are but 3. Love, limit, and let them be. That's Elaine Ward. 3 L words. And love always comes first. And in fact, if I ever write about creative discipline, the first chapter is always connection. And it never comes to the end of a book. It always comes to the end of one of these books, not the beginning, because building that connection, building that love, having that environment around them in the home to play, having magic, that's going to have a huge effect. And so, you know, I have love tips. Please hug your children and say, I'm filling your love tank, and tell me when it's full. If you're conscious on them, it will usually be around 3 seconds. And say, is it overflowing yet? Please say, I love you, and I love you so much. And make your ordinary moments extraordinary with your little games that you can put that don't cost anything, which are in my books and talks and all those things. We might come back to another podcast with a bit more tips. And so we got love. And then we got limit, which is my creative discipline, of course. Safe, healthy, and a level of kindness. We have to step in. We have to guide on these. Yeah. And then let them be. Let them be is let them be a baby. Let them be a toddler. Let them be a child. And then what's most profound of all is let them be who they are. That's where temperaments comes in.
I really want to talk to you about that one day.
Yes, we'll do temperaments. Love temperaments. I do a temperament workshop. I've got, if you check out happychildhappyhome.com, happychildhappyhome.com, I have a lot of workshops and talks coming up. One of them is on temperaments, and one of them is on senses and on creative discipline, and they are in. But when we get a child who is not like us, we can be introverted, they can be extroverted. That is the biggest gift we're ever going to get.
Amen.
That is the biggest spiritual development we are ever going to get. That's called unconditional love. And they need to let them be who they are, not who you imagine them to be, not who the world sees. It's just the most beautiful gift. Acceptance is a higher form of love. And let them be the stages of child development, and then let them grow into who they're going to be.
Yeah.
Amen to that.
Amen.
Path. That's a path. Blessed be everybody. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Lou. I'll put all the links to all of your websites and social media things in the show notes so people can find you and sign up for your workshops and buy your books. So I appreciate this. Go well.
No worries.